Ayes 33, nays 29.
In a dramatic late-night vote last Friday, New York became the 6th state in the nation to legalize same-sex marriage. I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents. History in Albany. Same-sex marriage becomes legal in New York, and Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio weighs in on next steps for the church. Plus, New York is the 6th state to allow same-sex marriage, and traditional marriage defenders cry foul.
To change the meaning of marriage between a man and a woman to anybody is only going to lead us to all sorts of problems in the future.
And a local church takes their celebration of Christ's body through the streets of Queens.
It's very important that we bring the Eucharist through the streets of Woodside, not only for Catholic people, but for non-Catholics alike.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Matt McClure has the night off. Well, same-sex marriage is now law in New York State. Less than an hour after the Republican-led state Senate passed the controversial measure, Governor Andrew Cuomo redefined the traditional definition of marriage in New York with the stroke of a pen. Reaction to the bill's passage was swift on both sides, with same-sex marriage advocates celebrating while defenders of traditional marriage warned of the possible detrimental impact of the new law on religious institutions and society. Ed Wilkinson, Currents' news director, joins me now to talk about his interview with Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio on this issue. Welcome, and thanks for being with us to talk about this this really controversial issue. Tell me, this is not what the bishop wanted.
Oh, absolutely not. And he was very much out front on this issue. You know, he feels that this was leading to the degradation of society by changing the definition of marriage as we know it, and it's something that he was very concerned about. Concerned enough that he went up himself to Albany and lobbied some of the state senators, but came up a little short, I'd say.
Right, sort of a surprising measure at the last hour that this happened the way that it did. Well, let's hear a little bit more about what the bishop had to say when you talked to him earlier.
Hello, Bishop DiMarzio. How are you?
Okay, Ed.
I guess like most of us New Yorkers, you were watching the Senate deliberations on Friday night, and I was wondering
Yes, I was.
Can you tell us your feelings as you watched this and it became evident that this bill was going to pass?
Well, it was kind of sad to look at the state of the New York Senate, and I guess the Assembly too. Didn't seem like there was much ability to debate this thing. It seemed like it was already cooked, and was very sad the way it was brought out, and it was very disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a sense that this thing was going to pass, or did you wait till the final vote was made?
Well, it seemed like it was a cliffhanger to the very end. I wasn't sure who was going to get up, and when the Republican from Buffalo there got up, Chris Santi, I guess it was finished, so that he had moved over. So it truly was a cliffhanger to the end.
Now, you've made a very dramatic statement, and you've sent it to all pastors and to principals in the diocese. And it calls for not inviting the politicians to our parishes and to schools. Can you explain why you did that?
Well, I don't know how dramatic it was, and how much they come is another question, but I think we had to give them some sense that we're not happy with what they've done, and that it's a very critical thing that has been passed, and to show our disapproval, and our disapproval for them. And this goes for all who were involved in this.
So no matter which way you voted, Democrat, Republican, this applies to everybody?
Yeah, I think, again, hard to say that people who were with us did not bring home what needed to happen. And again, it's a temporary thing. It's not forever, but at the same time, I think we had to show some kind of disapproval.
Mm-hmm. Well, you visited with Majority Leader Dean Scalos just about a week before the vote was taken. Could you tell us what went on at that meeting, what you said to him, what he said to you?
Well, he was trying his best, I think, and I think as the analysis is coming out that it was a lot of money that was put into this campaign, a lot of promises made with individual legislators, and a lot of threats in some cases. So he was not able to hold his caucus together for just a few votes. I think he sincerely tried. I think we've got to look at the political process here in the state, that such a slim margin could pass such an important bill, and that it should have been put to the voting of the people. I don't believe that 60% of New Yorkers are in favor of this. The polling is inaccurate at times, and in this case, it's very difficult to get the true sense.
Sure. There are some exemptions in this bill that exempts the church from certain things. I mean, same-sex couples will not be married in the church because we don't recognize that, of course. Was there enough protection, do you think, in the bill for religious people?
I really have not studied them yet, so I couldn't really tell you. I think the issue is there's never enough protection when you're dealing with something so critical. I think, again, if this was truly a civil right, well, then how can you exempt anyone from following this civil right? They seem to be talking out of both sides of their mouth in order to make believe that they had given some deference to religion. But this is not a religious issue. This is an issue of human nature. This is an issue of marriage and the proper understanding of marriage. Secondarily, it has something to do with religion, but it's not primary religious issue, and that's what people wanted to make it. That it was my religious or your religious thought that you can't impose on others. This goes well beyond that. It's a matter of family. It's a matter of redefining the family. It's not religious at the core. It's human at the core.
Where does the church go from here in terms of its teaching on the sacredness of marriage, Bishop? Obviously, we probably can do a better job than we've done. A lot of people don't seem to understand what we're talking about.
Well, that's for sure. I know people do not understand, and we've got to do a better job than we've done in the past. There's a lot more that needs to be done, and that's our job. From now on, we've got to really, in every forum available to us, let people know what marriage is, support marriage and the difficult state it's in with so many separations and divorce. That's our challenge right now. That's what we need to do.
And you said in your statement that all of the politicians should be held accountable. Are you hoping that people remember this particular vote when they go to the polls in November?
I hope so, and hope we can educate them to understand what happened. As I say, many people did not understand the importance or thought that, well, this is not going to bother me. Why would I hold this from somebody else that wants something? It's not quite that simple.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Bishop.
You're welcome. Take care, Ed.
Well, really some strong words there in a way from the bishop to say that, looking forward to not invite politicians to parishes and schools that voted in this latest vote. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, he played it down a little bit in our conversation, but I think it was really dramatic what he said because he put some teeth into his words. He didn't just say he was worried and concerned about the future, but he really said, we're not going to put up with this, and there's going to be consequences for your actions.
And that was sort of what you led the follow-up question to say, you're expecting people to vote a certain way perhaps in November. Yeah,
he said all politicians have to be held accountable for their vote. So it's, again, he put some teeth into it. Our bishop is not one to mince his words.
Right. All right, well, we'll have more with you, Ed Wilkinson, coming up in the next segment. Stay tuned. We'll also have more coverage on the aftermath of New York State same-sex marriage law. But first, we wanted to get reaction to the law from Catholics, and we spoke to parishioners in Brooklyn and Queens. We asked them what impact they thought the same-sex marriage law would have on the church.
I think it will have a big impact on the church.
They might force the Catholic Church to administer this same-sex marriage, to enforce it.
I don't think it affects the church as far as recognizing or having to perform them within the church.
I don't think that it would change anything. That the laws of the church will be as they are, and it will be up to Rome to make any change.
Well, the church will always be opposed to that. The impact that I'm worried about is the impact in the family, because it really destroys the very fabric of the family.
Welcome back. Well, after an historic vote by New York State Senate lawmakers, come Sunday, July 24th, New York will join Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, Iowa, and the District of Columbia in granting same-sex couples the legal right to marry. Governor Andrew Cuomo, a key backer of the same-sex legislation, expressed his pride that the state finally passed the legislation at New York's annual Pride Parade.
I believe New York has sent a message to this nation loud and clear. It is time for marriage equality all across this country. New York, for many, many years, has served as the progressive beacon for this country. And passing marriage equality, I think, advances the entire discussion in terms of social justice. And I was so proud and honored to be the governor of this state signing this law into effect.
But with the hangover from the celebrations a distant memory and the political reality setting in, supporters of traditional marriage are determined to make sure lawmakers who voted in favor of same-sex marriage pay a political price. Now, joining me again is Ed Wilkinson to talk more about New York's political landscape in the aftermath of the passage of the Marriage Equality Act. And we may be in New York City here in Brooklyn, but other parts of New York State, Central New York, upstate New York, are more conservative. And that's really what Michael Long, the chairman of the Conservative Party of New York State, with whom you spoke earlier, that's really what he's representing.
Sure, I think so. You know, Mike is a very fervent Catholic guy, and he lives here in Brooklyn, but he has a broader picture. He sees the entire state and how the Conservative Party feels. So I think he feels that there was some political shenanigans here, and he's going to make them pay for it.
All right, well, let's hear what Michael Long had to say to you earlier today.
Well, Mike Long, head of the Conservative Party in New York State, thanks for being with us today.
Good to be with you, Ed.
I know you were very involved in this same-sex marriage legislation and opposing it.
Right.
When did you become aware that this thing was actually going to pass?
I guess Friday morning, the day it passed. Up until then, I really believed we had a firm opportunity to stop the legislation. My hope was that the Republican senators would have rose up and said to Dean Skelos, we don't want this on the floor. This is the first time in history that I can remember that 4 senators, and that's who voted for the legislation, sort of made the rules for the majority of the Senate. It was clear to me that the majority of the senators, unless they're fooling us, didn't want this legislation. And being that, if that was the fact, then they should have stopped Senator Skelos, and Senator Skelos should have not let this bill on the floor.
Right. The Republicans who switched their vote, they had conservative backing, didn't they?
All 4 of them had Conservative Party endorsement. All 4 of them have will not have the Conservative Party endorsement before. They broke a trust. When they accepted the endorsement, they knew the Conservative Party, where we stood. This was one of the primary issues of our legislative platform. You know, Ed, this is not about changing tax law. It's not about adjusting rent control. This is not about naming a street after somebody. This is about changing the cornerstone for Western civilization. And that's what these senators did. No way will they get our endorsement again.
Of course, the Bishop DiMarzio was a very vocal opponent of this thing. And, you know, it seemed at one point as if, with, you know, by the Conservative Party coming out loudly and strongly, and then Bishop DiMarzio speaking out, it looked like this bill had stalled. What do you think happened there in the last week or two?
I don't mind saying, and I may get in trouble for saying this, but if there were more voices like Bishop DiMarzio, I'm not saying that because I'm here, if there were more voices like his, I think we could have turned this thing around and stopped this kind of vote. He was a very steadfast, clear voice in opposition to this, and I'm proud to be one of his parishioners in his diocese.
Sure. What do you think of his statement afterwards, where he, you know, banned politicians or state legislators from the parishes and from schools? They're not to be invited to any parish functions.
I think, look, we have to make up our mind. If we're going to be isolated, we might as well not give credence to those who do not respect our views or honor our principles that we stand for as Catholics.
Governor Cuomo is trying to make a distinction between religious marriage and civil marriage. Why do you think that doesn't float?
Well, look, you know, if Governor Cuomo could have pushed forth civil commitments, okay, but to change the meaning of marriage between a man and a woman to anybody, is only going to lead us to all sorts of problems in the future. Future generations are going to have real problem with this. And I'm very disappointed in the governor. This is a pledge he made to the homosexual community. I guess it's a pledge he's kept. But as governor, if I was governor of the state of New York, I wouldn't want to be known as the guy who brought this to the state of New York.
How much do you think this had to do with principles, or was it really just deal-making behind closed doors?
Well, I think it had very little to do with, I think that on Cuomo's side, it had all to do with him appealing to his liberal base, trying to convince them that he was still one of them. But it's an awful high price for the state of New York to pay. We're going to become a mecca. We're going to become a mecca for gay marriages here in the state of New York. And I'd rather become a mecca for a state that creates jobs and industry and have great schools and excel in education. But to be the mecca of homosexual marriages, I don't think this is something that the state of New York should be proud of.
It's only 6 states in the United States that have legalized this. What do you see happening across America? Do you think there's a solid opposition to it?
Well, my hope is, but certainly New York is going to be used as a springboard to try to get this done across the nation. New York is a very big state. It's an influential state. Clearly, the gay community has a lot of money, and they're going to use that to promote what has happened here. And that was the danger of this bill passing.
Mike, thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure to be with you, Ed. Thank you very much.
You know, a lot about politics and a lot about money, too. We've talked a little bit about how much revenue this could bring into the state and what that really means potentially for people. And he's saying that, you know, there are a lot of people that really are in favor of it because of sort of the, financial implications. But politically, clearly, there are a lot of people that are still having some majorly ruffled feathers about it.
Sure. Well, Mike is upset because there were, there were Republican swing votes there that really had told him something different. They said that they were against this bill, and then they did a flip-flop on it, and he seems determined to make them pay for that.
Right, right. Well, obviously there's going to be a certain amount of backlash, and there's going to be a certain amount of opposition that people are going to continue to voice, and I'm sure we'll see it partially, at least anyway, in the polls, and people will continue to protest.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out come November in elections.
Right. All right, Ed Wilkinson, thank you so much, news director here at Currents. Well, stay tuned. Will the FBI's second most wanted criminal continue tithing at his boyhood parish? We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines. But first, we head back to the streets and ask if the vote for same-sex marriage should have been taken by the people of New York instead of the lawmakers.
I think it should have been the people of New York rather than the politicians.
The people should have rallied against their behind their politicians so that they would have been pressured to oppose this.
As far as I know, the people of New York is opposed to same-sex marriage.
It should have been the people. It should have been the people. And a lot of them were against it, but they were pushed to do it.
Generally, politicians, it's sad to say, but most of them, they would take into consideration really what is best for them, not necessarily what is best for their constituency.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up later, a parish in Queens hits the streets for an annual celebration. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, it did not take long for New York City to capitalize on the bill to legalize same-sex marriage. NYC & Company, the city's tourism board, has started the NYC I Do campaign to get same-sex couples to come to the city for their weddings. New York does not have a residency requirement for obtaining marriage licenses, which makes the state a potential magnet for same-sex couples all across the country. Well, a sportscaster in Canada has filed an official complaint after he says that he was fired over a same-sex marriage tweet. Damien Goddard says that he was let go from his freelance position at Rogers Sportsnet after tweeting his support for a hockey agent who had voiced opposition to same-sex marriage. The agent had criticized New York Rangers forward Sean Avery for supporting same-sex marriage. Meanwhile, Methodist clergy in Illinois say they are going to defy their church's stance and begin blessing same-sex unions. A law went into effect in Illinois earlier this month, legalizing civil unions for same-sex couples. The announcement from the Illinois Methodists comes after a Methodist pastor in Wisconsin was found guilty in a church trial of overseeing a union of 2 women back in 2009. Reports say the issue of whether to bless same-sex unions will be on the table at the Methodist Church's International Conference next year. Provisions of a new Indiana law that banned the state's Planned Parenthood from receiving federal money has been put on hold. A district judge issued an injunction blocking the provision of the law that bans Planned Parenthood from getting Medicaid reimbursements. The part of that law that requires patients to be notified when a fetus can feel pain will also not go into effect while the judge hears Planned Parenthood's legal challenge to the law. And turning now to politics, it is official. Minnesota Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, a Tea Party favorite, well, she's entered the 2012 race for the White House. Bachmann made the announcement today before a crowd of supporters in her hometown of Waterloo, Iowa. During a recent debate of GOP candidates, Bachmann said she is 100% pro-life. A poll from the Des Moines Register shows Bachmann in a statistical tie with Mitt Romney for first place among likely participants in Iowa's GOP caucuses. Well, the Vatican's dialogue with non-believers may be coming to America. In an interview with Catholic news agency, a Vatican official says the Holy See's courtyard of the Gentiles may come to Washington, D.C. and to Chicago. Now, the project was launched in response to Pope Benedict's call for a new evangelization. Meanwhile, the Vatican is getting ready to unveil a brand new online portal that'll bring together information from its various news outlets. The portal at worldwideweb.news.va will be unveiled this Wednesday, which coincides with the 60th anniversary of Pope Benedict's priestly ordination. A Vatican official says he hopes the portal will improve the Holy See's internal communications. And he may have been one of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives, but parishioners at a Boston church remember him as a devout Catholic. Reporter Kimberly Bookman has more.
Whitey Bulger hiding out in Santa Monica may not seem so strange once you hear that back in the day when the Catholic Bulger wanted to pray, he could be found in St. Monica's in South Boston.
He just used to come into church here once in a while, you know? He was a good kid years ago, you know. Whitey was a good kid. But c'est la vie.
Parishioners say the entire Bulger family, including little brother Billy, had ties to the church. This Sunday, they're in everyone's prayers here.
That's the Catholic way. You would pray for the person that's being whatever they're going through.
My heart goes out to the whole family, and I pray that everything will work out fine.
People here tell us Whitey Bulger was very philanthropic, donating to his neighborhood church.
He's given a lot of money towards St. Monica's.
It's not clear where the money came from and when or if he stopped giving. What is clear is St. Monica's is on sacred turf for the mob boss. His childhood home in South Boston's Old Harbor Projects is just a block away, and the South Boston Liquor Mart he once owned is on the other side.
Well, that report from Kimberly Bookman. Well, stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. When we come back, it is an annual tradition at One Queens Parish. We'll take you to a Corpus Christi procession through the streets of Woodside. But first, more from parishioners in Brooklyn and Queens on the news from Albany. We asked them if the legalization of same-sex marriage in New York threatens traditional marriage.
I hope to God not.
I think it weakens marriage as a whole because I think that it weakens the meaning of marriage. Marriage is the framework and building block of a society.
Definitely it will harm. Because who knows, maybe more would be into it now.
Traditional marriage will never die because it is godly.
It would confuse our young people because, like I said, traditional marriage should really be between a man and a woman.
It should not affect them. Should not.
I think the marriage between man and woman will prevail.
Truth is unchangeable, and the truth is that marriage was defined by God, and that's what we celebrate.
Finally tonight, with the passing of the Marriage Equality Act, the Catholic Church undoubtedly suffered a tremendous blow this weekend, feeling deep disappointment at New York State's determination to redefine traditional marriage. But yet there was also reason for joy. This Sunday, churches around the world observed the feast of Corpus Christi, a Latin phrase that means the body of Christ. The feast day commemorates the Last Supper before Jesus' crucifixion and honors the establishment of the Eucharist. And for 4 years in running, St. Sebastian Church in Woodside, Queens has been taking it to the streets with a mass and public procession to celebrate this essential Christian ritual.
I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world.
Corpus Christi is a wonderful feast that allows us to honor the sacred body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ present sacramentally in the sacred Eucharist. And what happens on Corpus Christi traditionally is not only is there Holy Mass, but there's a procession so that we carry the Blessed Eucharist into the street. Christ needs to walk through us, through the streets of the city.
It's very important that we bring the Eucharist to the streets of Woodside, not only for Catholic people, but for non-Catholics alike.
Woodside is the exact geographic center of New York City, and our community is probably the most ethnically diverse community in the city.
Well, it's wonderful that the parishioners call it our procession. They have taken ownership of it, and that is magnificent. But there are so many different nationalities here, and each nationality adds to our parish. Everybody is welcome.
We're always looking for homes who are willing to make themselves a suitable altar so that the Blessed Sacrament can stop, everybody can pray, and then we can bless the people with the Blessed Sacrament in the monstrance.
I've been here 25 years in this house. Yeah. Also, my house is near the church, only just 1 minute to church. So every day, 7 o'clock Mass, I attended. This is the first flower this year. We cut it and then decorated our steps. So I feel very peaceful and thanks to God.
We've been parishioners here for over 35 years. It's an honor and a privilege, but most of all, it's a blessing to have the Eucharist with us in our home. The Eucharist is always something that's an important part of our life. It's not just one day or Sunday, it's every day. To be able to show that celebration, especially today, is really an honor.
Our parish has a variety of community that comes, Spanish, Indian. We have a lot. I mean, I don't even remember right now all the names, but we have. It's a great parish. We can be a bigger community in Jesus Christ.
And what an honor it would be to have the Eucharist stop at your home if you are in Woodside. What a great celebration. Well, that is it for this edition of Current. Stay with us as we continue our coverage of reaction to the Marriage Equality Act. We'll also bring you the story of 3 parishes on the verge of becoming 1 parish. What are your thoughts also on the law allowing same-sex couples to marry? We'd love to hear from you and share some of your thoughts with our audience. Please do this. Email us at dropusaline@currentsny.net. And you can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter to reach out. On Twitter, we're at CurrentsNY. We really want to hear from you because this is a big issue and we know that you want to weigh in. So for all of us here at Currents, I'm Francesca Maxime. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night. And we leave you now with just a few more thoughts on the issue of same-sex marriage.
It's a sad day for the church.
I don't think it'll ever end now because it's going to, other states are going to pick it up.
Marriage, by definition, is a man and a woman, and it has to be a procreative and unitive dimension to it. So you really can't, I don't think it should be called marriage. I mean, if you want to say civil union or whatever, but it's really not, it doesn't change the meaning of marriage to me.
I don't want to judge. That's not what I'm here for. So I just leave that up to God.
Same-sex marriage is not a marriage. It's a union between 2 people.
I feel sorry that they feel that kind of love, but it is still wrong. It is not our law. It is God's law. And we have got to find a way to embrace them and give them love.